ladies and gentlemen, my name is Total Biscuit of the WoW Podcast, Blue Please on CynicalBrit.com. Welcome to part 4 of my Mage Guide. This one is covering Arcane. Now, while you can do reasonable damage with Arcane, it's my opinion, and it's also Elitist Jerk's current opinion, that the spec is just lackluster in general. But, just to complete this for the time being, and yes, I will revisit this topic if and hopefully when it significantly changes, I'm going to just get this video out and done and out of the way, and then we can look at some other stuff. Okay, let's have a look at Arcane talent. So, you've seen that the special spell that you get is Arcane Barrage, you've got 25% damage, and you've also got this Mana Adept. The problem with Mana Adept is that it is essentially broken. Not because it doesn't work, because it's dumb. So, the more mana you have, the more extra damage you can do. So right now, I'm increasing spell damage done by up to 20%, and that is based on this item level 333 dungeon gear that has not been reforged or touched in any way, shape, or form. This is what you will have if you get full item level 333 and you don't reforge it, which is why you should reforge it, I might add, but hey, there you go. Best to show you it with a nice baseline. And each point of mastery that you get increases your damage done by up to an additional 1.5%. So if we have a look at our mastery right here, you'll see that we have 13.71 total of mastery. Right. So, let's have a look at Arcane, let's have a look at PvE spec choices. So, there aren't a huge number of things you can really do with this. It's fairly obvious as to what you need. I mean, you're going to have to start with that, obviously. And you're going to need at least 2 points in this. We'll come back to that in a bit. Torment the Weak is now essential, like it wasn't before. Of course it was. It's the kind of thing that you want to have every single time. It has been nerfed, as you can see, so it's only 6%, and it's only arcane damage spells now, so you're not going to be splashing into that for a Fire Torment the Weak build anymore. Improved Arcane Missiles gives you an additional 2 missiles. That's quite deceptive, because actually, your Arcane Missiles only gives you 3 now, unless you get this talent, which gives you 5, so the whole thing was a nerf, and is actually making you spend points to get what you had before, and I absolutely disapprove of that. Missile Barrage there. Once again, that's much, much higher up in the tree, much easier to get. Prismatic Cloak, well, we've seen that before, damage reduction and things like that. Presence of Mind you're going to want to take, because that unlocks Arcane Flows, so that's your flat cooldown reduction on things like Presence of Mind, Arcane Power, and Invisibility. And the most important thing, it knocks the cooldown of your Evocation down to 2 minutes. Okay, so that unlocks under there. Arcane Tactics, yes, you have to pay a talent point now for that 3% damage buff you gave to the raid. Rather irritating, I know, but hey, there you go. Encounters Absorption, improved Arcane Explosion, and improved Polymorph. You've got choices here, really. What do you want to do? Well, did we miss anything important? Well, we did. We missed a point in Netherwind Presence, so let's sort that out. Invocation, do you want that? Like I say, very situational, definitely a utility talent that may or may not serve you well. If you're in a situation where you're doing a lot of interrupting and you actually can do it without all the other classes in your raid doing it better, then yeah, absolutely take Invocation. Aside from that, Encounters Absorption, once again, that is something that may be useful to you. Improved Polymorph, I would honestly say is mostly a PvP talent, because you shouldn't be breaking it that way anyway. Not in a PvE environment, and we've got Improved Arcane Explosion right here, which, again, it knocks the cooldown, the global cooldown down a very significant amount, and it also reduces threat an awful lot. As to whether or not you want to be running around in the middle of a trash bag throwing that, which is often very risky, because some trash has AoE, some trash has cleave, yeah, I don't know, but it really depends on what the raid encounters are like. It's very difficult to make a judgment at this point. Encounters Absorption, definitely worth at least taking 1 point in, I would think, just because, hey, it might be nice. Throw up your Mana Shield or throw up your Mage Ward and see what ends up happening there. Get a little bit of extra damage from, say, raid-wide damage in a raid boss. Arcane Potency, like I say, has been changed slightly. It's now your next 2 damaging spells up with a 15% extra crit chance, as opposed to 1 with 30%. And that's after gaining Clear Casting or Presence of Mind, as it currently is in Wrath. Slow, you want this for this. So, Nether Vortex will now apply the slow automatically, which is absolutely fantastic. Obviously, it saves you global cooldown, and it saves you a lot of mana. Absolutely worth having. Focus Magic, no-brainer right there. And now Improved Mana Gem gives you 2% of your maximum mana as spell power for 10 seconds when you use a Mana Gem, and you are going to want to use those Mana Gems. Right, so we still need to spend 2 more points. We could put them in Invocation if you so desire. This is okay. Like I say, it does have some PvE utility, mostly PvP in my honest opinion. Whether or not a complete silence is worth it it depends on the mob, because a lot of mobs just use one spell school, so actually the spell lock is perfectly fine. Again, it's up to you, really, and it depends what kind of encounters we come up against. You might want to buff up your encounters absorption a little bit. Maybe take a little bit of improved blink just for some extra mobility. Again, it's going to depend on how much mobility is required in the Cataclysm raid encounters, which we don't know yet. I'm thinking there will be quite a bit, since they have mentioned they do want to introduce it, but we've seen no proof of that. Okay, Arcane Power, there you go. That's your 31 points. And like I say, you can play around with this, really. If you're in a situation where you're going to be doing a lot of this, absolutely take that. If you're not in a situation where you're going to be doing a lot of this, then maybe take that one instead. So you do have a few things you can play around with. You can take this if you so desire. Reduce a little bit of incoming damage. It's not a huge amount, but it might help. But yeah, that is what I would use as a general spec. I think that's probably got the most general utility, and it's less specific. Okay, so you got 10 unspent points. What you're going to do? Well, you're definitely taking this. Unquestionably, you need it. So that's going to refund 30% of your base mana cost of spell crits. With the amount of mana that you chew through with Arcane, that's an absolute must. Is there anything we have here? Yeah, well, yeah, obviously. 3% crit, you're going to want to take that straight off the bat. Is there anything else? Well, no, not really. You could take useless points to get down to the second tier, but what would you take? Ice Flows? No point. None of these are of any use at all. Obviously, slow is a slow effect and a snare and not a chill effect, so this is not going to help you. So what else can we do? Well, 3 Burning Soul, knock us down here. Sounds like a fairly reasonable idea, but then what do we do? Well, that's not exactly all that helpful, is it? You could use this, if you so desired. It seems weird putting Fire Blast into your Arcane rotation, because that's your damaging spells, a 10% chance to reset your cooldown of Fire Blast. I just don't see you using that. Spreading any fire damage over time effects, which obviously you won't have with Arcane. Ignite, it'll buff up your Flame Orb a little bit. Whether or not I take that as opposed to, say, 2 points in this, I don't know. Like I said, there's not a lot of splash utility here at all. There's not a lot of synergy, really, between these two trees with Arcane. So, spend your last 2 points in whatever, really. Invocation, if you so desire. Extra point in there, maybe throw one into improved polymorph for safety. It's entirely up to you, because you're not going to get a lot of utility out of any of these, really, and I wouldn't bother with it. Right, what we're going to do, we're going to throw them in there just for the time being, and that's what we're going to roll with. So that's 33, 5, and 3. Obviously, I shouldn't really need to disclaim this, but this kind of thing can be changed and may very well be changed. And it certainly should in the terms of Arcane, because I'm going to show you exactly why very, very soon indeed, before the release of Cataclysm. Right, let's learn this and let's go and have a look at some glyphs. Okay, what do we have available? Right, okay, ones that are relevant to Arcane. So Arcane Barrage, Arcane Blast, Arcane Missiles, Mage Armor. Those are your relevant ones. As to what you're going to use, Arcane Blast, yeah, unquestionably you're going to want that. Arcane Missiles, yes, I would say so. Versus Arcane Barrage, I would take Arcane Missiles, really. That's my personal opinion on that. You're going to be using it more, it's going to proc more often, it's a nice crit chance as opposed to just a flat 4% damage increase on Arcane Barrage, which doesn't have a great coefficient anyway. And what else are we looking at? Mage Armor. You need this. You do. DPSing without Mage Armor up, well, I'll show you just exactly what happens there. Okay, cool. Major glyphs. Arcane Power. It's not bad, is it? Arcane Power is active. The global cooldown of your Blink, Mana Shield, and Mirror Image is reduced to 0. It's not bad. It's very nice indeed. So I think what you could do there is actually set up a macro where you would be able to cast that and Mirror Image at the same time, because a lot of these buffs have been triggering a global cooldown for a while, which is a total pain in the ass. Okay, let's put that one in there. What else do we have? Again, we've got Evocation, which just seems to me like, why would you not, you know? This you don't need, because it's now tied into Nether Vortex, so it's the same range as Arcane Blast. So you're going to take Evocation in Major. Then you've got a few other... you've got a couple of utility options, really. Blink, if you want a bit of extra mobility, get a little bit further, that's not too bad. Invisibility, again, more mobility there, but it just seems like a little bit of a pain in the ass to pop invisibility just to get a movement boost in PvE anyway. Mana Shield reduces the cooldown of your Mana Shield by 2 seconds. the cooldown of the Mana Shield isn't all that large already, if I recall correctly, and just how much of this are you going to be pumping out in PvE? Not too much. That's 12-second cooldown there. So really, the last one is entirely up to you. It's all about getting a little bit of extra utility squeezed in there. For the moment, we're going to take invisibility. Polymorph, also very nice. Again, it depends on just how reliable your raid group is, really. I would think that you might get an awful lot out of Polymorph, actually. Oh, by the way, I got some Dust of Disappearance. So apparently I can clear glyphs now. I bought this at a glyph vendor, and it cost me 10 gold each. So, can I replace things? Yes. There we go. And obviously, you've seen the glyph interface. All of these glyphs are persistent. As far as I'm aware, this Dust of Disappearance might end up getting made by inscribers, just to give them something extra to sell. Because, hey, you know, I know they've been complaining about this a lot, and I don't really blame them. Aside from that, minor glyphs, whatever the hell you please, it really doesn't matter. We're going to take this just so that my mirror images show up casting Arcane Blast. And no, I don't believe that stacks anything. It's purely cosmetic. Okay, so let's have a look at the Raiders training domain. Let's have a look at what we're going to be using here. So we're going to remove everything from the bar that we don't actually need for this DPS rotation. We're going to explore the various rotations available and see if we can figure out anything that doesn't suck. And obviously this is a problem. The Elitist Jerks thread on this is illuminating, but they have indicated that they haven't even figured out the optimum DPS rotation either. And they have a nice summary of all the problems with Arcane, which is what I'm basing all of this off. Okay, Frost Nova, we don't need that. We'll put that there for the time being. We'll keep Arcane Explosion. I just want to show you this, because we're talented now. It's pretty quick, isn't it? But look at how fast it drains mana. Unbelievable. Area of Affecting in this particular expansion is way less effective, just because of how expensive it is to do. Spell Steal there, and a Mana Shield. There's Blink. Might as well show you Blink. And yes, I did just keyboard turn there. It's more convenient at the time. There we go. Oh, look. Turning with the mouse. Oh. Every now and again, you do keyboard turn. It's just convenient. As long as you're not doing it all the time, why does it matter? Let's Blink. Okay, there you go. See, nice Blink speed. Gets you a 3-second boost. That's going to be handy for moving into position and getting out of the fire. So, one might say that that's definitely worth taking at least 1 point in. Alright, okay, cooldowns. Now, I'm not going to be using any cooldowns here because I haven't done it in the previous videos, because like I say, it does give you an unfair indication of how much DPS you're going to be doing. What I will do, because it's essential, is use Mana Gem. You need this. You have to use it. You also have to use Evocation. The draining of mana here is unbelievable. I will show you first just how easy it is to do that. Where'd I put this gem? Okay, there we go. Mirror image there as well. Have I missed anything in terms of Arcane? No, and that's really not good, is it? There's nothing new for you to use. There's nothing really for you to play with here. The problem with Arcane right now is I must assume that it is behind. It has to be, because if it's not, then Arcane just sucks. Let's show you why. Okay, buff up what we've got. Mage Armor is absolutely essential here. You must use it. You have to. Okay, so I've got 63k mana right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do nothing more than spam Arcane Blast. Now, Arcane Blast has had some changes. Let me show you. Arcane Blast now stacks 4 times. So, the effect lasts for 6 seconds. Now, here's the weird thing about it. Arcane Blast used to affect other arcane spells. It doesn't anymore. It only affects Arcane Blast, which means that the old rotation of 4 times AB and then Arcane Missile, sort of Missile Barrage, doesn't really work anymore. The weird thing is you have to kind of do it anyway, because otherwise you run out of mana. Let me demonstrate exactly what I mean here. So, reset our meters. Obviously, you're not going to want to do this, and you're going to find out exactly why. Now, I would love to actually focus magic on somebody, but hey, there's no one around to do it, so here we go. Right, let's get some spammage on. So, we're just going to do nothing more than spam Arcane Blast over and over again. And yes, we do have a miss chance, and we're actually missing quite a bit here. There we go. Let's get it properly stacked. 3 and 4. There you go. 700% mana cost increase on cast, 92% increase in damage. So I'm hitting non-crit for about 20k here, which is good. But look at my mana. Look how fast it's going down. Crit for 40k there. Done. That's it. So we drained that in, what, about 30, 35 seconds? Okay. Let's fix that. So obviously you can pop your gem, and that's recommended. That'll get you 12k mana back, which at that stack will be at 1 cast of Arcane Blast. Obviously, you're not going to stack it up that high very often, so let's have a look at rotations and let's try and figure something out. So the question is, when you cast Arcane Blast, do you want to use Arcane Missiles at every opportunity? Let's assume that you do, so let's give that a try. Okay, so we've got 6.6k DPS there, but it's absolutely not sustainable at all. It really isn't. You just can't do it. You drain your mana far too quickly, even with an Evocation and a Gem, and Raid Regeneration Talents. And of course, the improved regeneration of this, it's not doing an awful lot. Okay, let's try something different. So, let's open up with that, and what we're going to do is we're going to use Arcane Missiles every time we get it. So, we've got one there. Now, the damage of Arcane Missiles is not exactly what I'd call great at this point in time. And obviously, you're going to miss the proc because I'm trying to Q cast here. So, I start casting before the next one ends. And obviously, if you've used Quartz, you know exactly what that's all about. It's a good way to compensate for lag, particularly on US servers. Okay, got a nice clear cast there. There we go. Hymn of Power, so that's procced as well. There we go. But again, because you're not getting the boosted damage on that, the actual damage you're getting on Arcane Missiles is not amazing. So at the moment, we're sustaining about 5.4k DPS, about half mana right now. So if we pop one of these, there we go. Now that gives us a nice spell power damage increase. What you might want to do here is actually use that to spam Arcane Blast and try and get the biggest possible crits you can. That's just a possibility. I mean, we're maintaining mana at this without too much of a problem. Switching over to Arcane Missiles whenever we get it, because obviously that's saving us mana. It's allowing us to regen at a fairly rapid rate, and the damage is not too bad here at all. The problem I've got with it is it's really boring. And honestly, it's absolutely dull in every possible way. It's just hit this until you get this. And of course, if you get unlucky, which we haven't so far, then your Arcane Missiles may not proc, and you'll end up stacking up to 4, which would kind of suck. Now, then if you want to start burning, and you want to hit really, really hard, then you can do that. Obviously, if you're using any kind of cooldowns, that'll be a good idea. So we're going to hit it twice with that because we've got Arcane Potency. So we've got one big crit already. Let's see if we can get another. We can't, but then there's Arcane Missiles right there. And we're regenerating fairly well here. So about 5.5k DPS in this gear that is not hit capped in his 333 dungeon. It's not bad, is it? It's not terrible. Let's have a look at some other possibilities for a rotation. So let's say that we only wanted to stack up to 2. And this was a suggestion in the EJ thread, so we're going to have a look at that and just have a look and see how effective that is. So we're going to stack Arcane Blast up to 2, and if we don't have Missile Barrage available, we're going to hit Arcane Barrage instead to reset it. And we're going to try and just come up with a rotation that just works, and just reasonable damage, and doesn't drain your mana down. And then if you want, you can start controlling your mana more by nuking Arcane Blast to drain mana faster. And obviously we're not using any of these cooldowns. The only thing we're going to use is Mana Gem, because you really do need it to maintain your mana. Okay, so we're going to go 1, 2. Now, are we getting missiles? No, we're not, so there we go. Arcane Barrage. Like I say, you don't do a massive amount of damage with this, sadly. That was good. We've got Hymn of Power there as well. No missile proc, so Arcane Barrage once again. Okay, we've got missiles there, so I might as well use that straight away. Let's get that out. Okay, let's hit it again. 1, 2, and AM. But then, we're still maintaining actually respectable DPS with that. So 1, 2, we didn't get missiles, so let's use Arcane Barrage instead. Let's say it actually works fairly well, honestly. You can do that if you so desire. And if you really want to, you can do that. Now, the good thing about this rotation is that your mana is absolutely solid the entire way through. Now, I'm regenerating nice and fast. You can maintain this almost indefinitely and get a good 5.5k DPS out of it. The problem is, again, that it is really boring. It's nowhere near as good as the other two, and there's also another problem, really. You're looking at Mana Adept as a way of encouraging you sort of to save your mana and to keep your mana really high. But the whole idea of Arcane right now and doing big damage actually provides you with a means to break that and not make it happen. So if I'm starting to spam Arcane Blast, for instance, and I really want to put out some extra damage, I'm actually losing damage as I go along. It just seems so counterintuitive to me. Another problem I've got with it is that it's saying it's all about conserving mana and all that kind of thing, but we don't get anything new to make that happen. Well, what have we got? We've got Mana Gem, which we had before, and obviously we've got a talent in it, which is quite nice, and we've got Evocation on a 2-minute cooldown, which also we had before. What else do we have? Well, Mage Armor, It's a passive. We've got nothing else, really, that we didn't have in Wrath in order to keep our mana going, which, like I said, makes it a very lackluster tree, in my opinion. You can do good damage with it. As I've demonstrated right there, it's functional. As to what the optimum rotation is, I don't know. Let's try something different, shall we? So, we're still hitting about 5.5k with that 2 and then either AB or Missile Barrage rotation. What about if we go 3? Can we maintain our mana? Let's try it. Okay. So we go 1, and we're going to save Missile Barrage for 3 deliberately. Now, obviously, you don't get the benefit from this, but you do hit harder on the 3rd AM, and that's the most important thing. Bit of lag there. Okay, back on that. 1, 2, and 3. Hit it right at the end. There we go. 1, 2, and 3 once again. Now, that's fairly reasonable, isn't it? We've got a little bit of a DPS boost there. We are using more mana, obviously, as you might imagine. Get the 3 stacks there. A little bit costly because I got a miss there. It's not too good. Obviously, you're not going to be getting that once you got proper gear. Still, it's about 5.5k at the moment. Obviously, these numbers are not necessarily accurate, but is mana maintainable at this level? Well, it's hitting me pretty hard, but then again, of course, I can pop that, so we'll be back in business there. Then we're doing extra damage. Let's try and spam it up to 4 now that we've got this. Let's see if we can hit it really hard. A couple of clear casts, that really helped matters. Obviously, that's very random number generated. Crit for 53k there, so that's not too bad at all. Okay, so I spammed away all of that. It took a lot of mana, but my DPS shot through the roof during that period. So when you hit that, it might be best for you to do nothing more than spam Arcane Blast if you have the necessary mana to do so. Hit it really hard. Keep hitting it. Go, go, go. Let's throw away the rest of our mana, evocate, and get back on with it, and just see how much it affects the DPS. Because obviously standing there doing nothing, that kind of blows. I'm going to go for 3 right there on AM, so returning back to the old rotation. Try and throw away the rest of our mana. Shame we got that there and not later. It's so random. It's really unfortunate that they've made it this random. Let's evocate right here. So we're going to drain some damage. Obviously, you're going to see the DPS meters go down when I start hitting again. Okay, right back on casting. And we're on 54k mana. Now, what you can then do is you can change to the 3 AM rotation or the 2 AM rotation to make sure that your mana stays up until your next gem or evocate. So you should be able to keep your mana going this way. But obviously, you want to try and keep it as high as possible because then you're benefiting more from the mastery. But yeah, using this rotation, we're up to about 6.3, which is quite solid. Obviously, we threw away a lot of mana during that mana gem phase, but honestly, that's when you should be throwing away an awful lot of arcane blasts and making sure your mana is nice and high. There's a nice bit of synergy there. I do like that a lot, that you mana gem for a quite significant amount of mana, and you may get more back in the final version. That's a mana opal, I believe, that they're casting there. A lot of these things haven't been updated, like you can't create the latest mage food, for instance. So, you do that. And then, because you've got that extra mana back, you then hit AB as hard as you can. And you keep going AB, AB, AB. Spam it all the way until that buff disappears. And then you're getting these massive, giant crits that are really pushing your DPS up. It's very spiky damage, but as long as your tank's solid, then you should be fine. Bear in mind, you don't get threat reduction talents on Arcane anymore, with the exception of your Arcane Explosion. Like I said, that is how I would personally do PvE Arcane DPS based on the current build. It's just not very entertaining. It's not as good as Frost. It's not as good as Fire. It does comparable DPS right now. It's just boring. And I think that that's a real problem and something they do need to look into. I think that the talents don't synergize well with their vision for this particular spec. You know, there's controlling mana and things like that, the whole mastery of the mana adept. You don't have enough tools to keep your mana up without deliberately gimping your DPS. And I think people are also going to have a problem with figuring out just where they should keep their mana. They're going to have to try and work out the coefficient, and they're going to have to do that on the fly. It's not clear, for instance, just how much mana you need in order to keep your mana adept at full. What happens when you're at half mana, for instance? Is it just half the coefficient right there? Do you just get 10% extra instead of 20? It doesn't tell you. So I think the interface does need to be updated there. I'm sure there's going to be some mods that will help there as well. But it's not a completely useless spec. It's just really behind the other two right now. That's what I do in PvE. And, of course, if you have any further questions, then you can leave them below. Obviously, dumb commentary based on Wrath information, I would strongly suggest you do not leave. do check the information in the Elitist Jerks thread that I've linked in the description below before asking any more questions. They can probably answer them better than I can. And, of course, if your information is out of date, then your question might not be relevant. My name's been Total Biscuit. This has been part 4 of my Mage Guide covering Arcane PvE. We might do another one just to have a look at the possibility of Frostfire builds with the Fire spec and a few things that I maybe forgot to do over the course of these videos. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you next time.